everyone, and happy Thursday. Thank you all for joining us again. Ashley Duell and Natasha Velez coming
Hi,
back at you
everyone.
this Thursday. We have an exciting topic to talk about, one that, again, has a topic that was sparked by members of our communities surrounding how do you hire? Who do you hire first? And particularly, how do you find a kick-ass project manager that can also speak to the government and manage large projects?
Your GovCon team normally would start with, if you won your first contract, your project manager. They're the first person you want to hire. Now, if you're hiring a bunch of employees, hopefully a staffing company.
Right.
um, you hopefully have HR, but your key personnel is definitely your project manager or your program manager because they are in charge of ensuring that you have the quality key personnel and quality employees that are going to be needed for the project. They're going to be needed there for that kickoff call with your customer to ensure deliverables, schedules, communication plans, and all of that's in place. And essentially, they're going to be really key people internally in getting this whole transition plan started for you to effectively and efficiently start on your first day. Of course, to start onboarding if that's what's happening. So I would suggest your project manager. And obviously someone of all the subject, not your friend down the block, like your subject matter expert, essentially in the role that they're supposed to be playing, a subject matter expert in it. Doesn't hurt to have a veteran. It never hurts. The government really does. If you're in the Army sector, if you're in the Navy sector, if you win a contract with NAFAC, I know a lot of people that hire project managers that, were Navy veterans. And it's super, super important to understand that these people are not just managing your project, they are also managing the client relationship. And if they have a good relationship with your customer is going to value you and it's going to value that relationship. And it's going to make them give you a better CPAR ratings, which is your report card from the government. And B, it's also going to help with business development because they'll want to give you more work. They'll want to give you more delivery orders. They'll want to continuously do business with you. So your project manager is like super, super key and important, I would say.
I would definitely agree. And if you have, and I hope at this stage of the game, if you have even an LLC, that you have at some level performed a SWOT analysis on yourself, right?
Yeah, hopefully.
Anecdote for you. I took in college general accounting, I took managerial accounting, and by the end of that painfully long year, what I learned was that I'm hiring someone to do that for me, right? We all have our strengths and weaknesses. Look, I'm really good at numbers. I graduated in statistics in high school, but keeping my books is not my strong suit. So I pay someone to do that for me, knowing that that's my weakness. If you're solo and you're trying to figure out, how do I even find somebody? What do I even look for in someone to manage my projects if in government contracting? And I would definitely say, I have folks say go to LinkedIn and Indeed. I personally think Indeed is the last resort I would use, but Glassdoor can also be a valuable option too if you're looking to hire someone as W-2. Now, there are companies, project managing experts that have their own firms. If you're looking for an individual, though, look for PMP. Right? That's sort of the acronym. And bonus points if that person is a veteran, bonus points if that person has managed government projects before.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely hiring a project manager that has experience in the industry that you're in or that you're targeting, for those of you who are looking to diversify your service offerings, would be highly recommended. And typically that project manager is going to be, their salary is going to be inclusive in what you're billing the government. So,
Mm-hmm.
even if you can't afford one now, the
Oh yeah,
only
you
thing,
can build it into your pricing.
yeah, build
I,
that
I
in.
hear a lot of people say, "Oh, well, how can I afford them?" Like,
Well,
what do you think the
the only
pricing
thing
is
that
part
you
of?
the only thing that you really have to respond to that opportunity is you have to have or the ability to acquire each
Yes.
and all the requirements, right?
Absolutely.
So, making an offer to a project manager contingent on the award is one way that some of the big guys manage to keep their labor costs down, and not have to incur that expense if they don't get the contract.
Correct. And if you get a letter commitment from them saying that they will work for you, A, it looks really good with the government, and B, they'll jump on board once you have the money and you start acquiring the contract. So, I mean, it's a win-win right there. But to second on that, yes, internally, um, back end support is super important also. Yes, your accounting, your HR, it doesn't have, I always say, sit down because you never know who you need and what you need until you start taking tasks off of yourself. I have some people that are like, no one does it better than me. I know that because I do that all the time. No, I'm learning to delegate. My team has grown to like 10 now, but that took time. So I had to sit down and I had to write in a little Excel sheet and say, what are my everyday tasks? What do I do every day? And it's not about the big items. The big ticket items, some things are meant for you to do. Like I'm really good at sales and I like that. And I don't want to take that away from me. But what do I do that takes away from my sales time? Is it accounting? Is it making phone calls? Is it posting on LinkedIn? What is it? What is my everyday task? So those things I line them out and you don't notice them until you start writing and seeing how long you spend on these little small tasks that could easily be outsourced to someone else, saving you time, saving you money in the long run. Granted, you're paying them, but your money is coming back in an investment because they're saving you that time that you can be spending, that I can be spending on sales. So if I go
That's
and I
right.
get another client because I took off something as mediocre as, data entry, I mean, it's a
That's how
win.
you scale, especially when you're in the services side.
Oh,
And
yeah.
if you're in products, even the same holds true. Like some of my most successful product suppliers, who are doing a massive amount of business with the likes of DLA
Mhm.
and even some FEMA, they're stretched, right? Because they can't
Oh, yeah.
possibly fit more bids in a month without someone else like duplicating themselves,
Mhm.
right? So everybody gets to a point where they bottleneck.
Yeah.
And definitely, so we have sort of a mixed, I know at least in my Facebook community, we have a mixed audience, and it's been very much more prevalent over the last several years where a lot of you guys are project managers already. So you're project managers, and you know that at some level, no matter what you're doing for the government, they assume that you're in essence a project manager.
Yeah.
So you can really utilize that skill set in multiple different industries.
Mhm.
I actually talked to a business owner the other day, woman owned small business. Her experience is in project management. I'm talking like 30 years experience. IT project management. She had emergency project management. There were a lot of different industries that she was able to utilize that skill set in. Pretty much the only bucket that we weren't able to put her in was acquisition support. They do project management actually to manage contracts internally with the government. So
So,
there are so many different ways that one can utilize that skill set, and it's absolutely a necessity to having government contracting.
yeah.
So if you're a crappy project manager, that needs to be your first hire, absolutely, hands down. So let's
Oh,
say
yeah.
you are a project manager. Then what's going to be most important? And I'm going to have to vote BD here. And if you disagree, you have
No, so, so most people will focus on, project manager, the employees that's needed for the project, things like that. I've seen people get a 5-year contract and not put any money towards business development. I will let you know.
like a GSA schedule.
It comes so fast.
It does.
5 years hits so fast. You get so complacent, and before you know it, all the work that you put in, I mean, all the business development and capture management that you put in does not always hit that same year. It takes a year or two for you to see the gains of all the work put in now. So if you're not investing in a business development person now, 2 or 3 years from now, your pipeline is it's just going like that.
Yep.
It's just going down. The business development person's job is to continuously keep your pipeline growing, keep you relevant, making the relationships that are eventually going to manifest itself into dollars. So,
Wait a
yeah,
minute. You mean that there should be more in my pipeline than just solicitations?
God, yes.
Where
Please
do
stop.
those opportunities come from?
Acquisitions.
No,
Of
seriously, a
course,
lot of
Kat.
them are going to
My
come from your
God.
conversations, you know? If you're not the BD person and you're like me, I'm a huge introvert, full of transparency. So, I'm not the one that's very comfortable coming up to you at a conference and just sparking conversation. But there's a huge proportion of the population that is very, very good at that. And a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
those folks end up in sales, business development.
Oh, yeah.
And if that is one of your shortcomings and you find yourself at a lack of opportunities in your pipeline for next quarter, get yourself a BD person, because one skill that we have that not a lot of others do is our ability to active listen and read through the lines. I'm a
Yeah.
huge introvert, but I listen. And that you can't possibly sell to anybody. I don't care if they're government or your neighbor, if you aren't listening for pain points, right? And the
Oh,
BD people are trained for that. That's what they
so
do.
good. And you know what else? I'm going to use an example, but I know there's a lot of consultants that will say that if you are a business owner, you should be the BD person. And to some extent, you should. Um, but I don't believe that all business owners should. Um, you have
That's
to know
true.
your
I agree
strengths
with
and you
that.
have to know your weaknesses. I had there's some things as a development person you can be not just an extrovert, but you also see the opportunity in every little thing. You have to be able to see a bud and be able to be like, oh, I can see something bigger out of this, right? Versus everything that's just completely obvious to you, right? A solicitation, that's obvious. But the potential for one, for a potential for a sale, a need, or an unknown need, a problem, and I can come to you with a solution, a budget, a strategy, and a schedule. Um, I've had business owners that, I'll set up a meeting with them and the contracting officer, and they'll sit there in front of the contracting officer, and the contracting officer is like, I don't know what to do, but this is my problem. And for a business development person, that is just like money.
Music to our
Oh,
ears. Tell me
thank you.
more about that problem.
How can I'm going to solve it for you. Let me tell you how we're going to fix it. No, they literally sat there and they were like, oh, there's no sale here. They don't know what they want. No concept whatsoever of how to
Wrong answer.
how to like make that sale. Drop the ball completely. So not every business owner is a BD person. And if you know that about yourself, if you are struggling, then get someone that can save you time. Because for them, that's a no-brainer. For most BD
Right.
people, we're like, we got this. And that person is going to help build your business. Now, realistically, I will say that most people stay away from the BD component of hiring someone early on because BD people are expensive.
Yeah, they can be very,
They're very expensive.
very
And the
expensive.
ROI, it takes a while,
It
right?
takes a while, and it also takes action, right? As a BD person myself, I had scheduled 6 meetings within 8 weeks for one of my clients a year or 2 ago. And in one of the first of the 15-minute meetings, I miss client, do you need any assistance in preparing? Do you have your questions ready?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, yeah, we got it. We got it. Client goes in the meeting, and for the first 12 of the 15 minutes, just proceeds to pitching. Full blown PowerPoint deck, just pitching.
Mhm.
There was barely any time for introductions. There was no questions being asked. And it dawned on me after the fact, like, we don't know what we don't know. When I
Yeah.
asked the client, "Are you ready for this?" The client thought that they were ready. They had this whole PowerPoint deck prepared. But I didn't realize that this was I probably should have taken that meeting solo, as a BD person, but that
Yeah.
was not sort of in the scope. I kind of took the client's word for it. Nothing, there were no real next steps after that, needless to say. So that directly affected my ability to show value for that client. I got the meeting, but at
Right.
some level, it's up to you, the business owner, to execute and to listen to your team and listen to what those who know better than you are telling you.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why'd you hire them? Right?
Correct. Correct. That's honestly very common.
Very, very common.
We hire to tell them what to do. Not for their skill sets. That's crazy.
Well, that's why we hire mentors. That's why we hire consultants.
Yep.
That's why, we hire people to develop our systems and, our back office structure, our setup, our processes. We hire lean consultants to help us eliminate waste. We hire
Yeah.
people to scrub our carpets. So, at the end of the day, everything that you're going to do in government contracting is either going to cost you time or money. And
Yes.
alluding to something that you said earlier to kind of piggyback off of that, if the time that a subject matter expert can do it is going to monetarily cost you less than if you try to fumble through it yourself,
Mhm.
that should be your indicator to outsource. And
Yes.
just making sure that you have a clear expectation of what the metrics are, what are your expectations, a clear scope of work, rather than just saying, oh, hey, I'm going to pay you to schedule me some meetings.
Yep.
All right, I can schedule meetings all day. I know how to design a killer capability statement that gets somebody's attention, like the best of them. I'll get the meeting.
You need closers.
If
You need closers.
Yeah, you got to close the deal. There has to be a follow through. There has to be a next step. So,
Mhm.
with our last, say, 10-ish minutes, what's number 3 on the list of
Mm.
top to hire?
You need an internal team. Whether that's HR, accounting, or part-time of the both, you're gonna need something a little more in-house. I will say that, if you are at a point where you're hiring BD and you're hiring a project manager, don't skimp out on compliance and on, your HR team. So, you're gonna need an accounting, at least an accounting clerk, to make sure you're DCA compliant and that you have everything that you need kind of put where it needs to be when it comes to your accounting system.
If
And
your
great.
contract is cost plus, definitely. DCA compliance is not necessarily across the board. But if you're bidding on a cost plus contract, that is definitely going to be an expense that you'll have to work into your pricing for sure.
Not just cost plus, but if you are, let's say you're an 8A, and let's say you start doing partial
And
payments,
you-
progress
Mhm.
payments, you get audited a lot for part.
Yes, the audits are.
Um, you also get a lot of audits for different things, cost realism, fair pricing. Sometimes you'll have an accounting system audit just for certain things. So it doesn't always have to be cost plus. I've had audits on firm fixed price. Um, and I don't know why, because it's like it's all the risk is on the contractor. So there has been quite a bit. So you want to make sure that you're at least have your chart of accounts where they need to be, and then you have someone that's knowledgeable and
So
that's
that could
got
be a
your
bookkeeper,
yeah,
right? I definitely, if you're bidding on government contracts, and the same goes with your GovCon accountant, your GovCon attorney, right? There are a lot of attorneys out
yes,
there who pretty much specialize in the FAR. That
yes.
doesn't mean you have to give them a $10,000 retainer. But if you don't do your due diligence and interview, I always say rule of 3, right? You get 3 quotes, you pick the one you like. Um, and that the one that you like may not be the cheapest, but might be the one that understands your business the most. And same with your GovCon accountants, right?
Mhm.
Different across the board. If you're in staffing, your accounting requirements are going to look a lot different than if you're just pricing the cost of goods sold and calculating profit. So pick somebody that has the experience that's relevant to your niche and what it is that you're doing.
Yep.
And even just kind of know who you're going to go with when the time comes. Because
Mhm.
all it takes is a bid protest, right? One of your contracts gets protested because you made an error on your SAM registration and your competitor caught it, that might trigger you to have to quickly incur legal expenses. So I'd rather know who I'm going to call when the time comes rather than, as the other shoe's about to drop, figuring out who I'm going to go with and how much it's going to cost me. So when you kind of do that legwork in advance and interview those who you're going to go with, you have a better idea of how you can accommodate your pricing on a larger contract given all these factors
Oh
involved and
yeah.
all of your new overhead expenses and labor costs.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think your HR team definitely as well. Somebody for HR anyways. I think one thing I never realized when I started hiring is how much work it is just to manage employees.
Yes, even
They have a
onboarding
lot of
process.
needs. And that's fair. They're allowed to, but
Yeah,
it takes a lot of time. So, yes, HR, payroll, some sort of
there are
assistance.
companies, that sort of provide that as a managed service.
They have
Um,
those, so you can shop around and find yourself because some of them offer the HR services, and the payroll platform and the onboarding system and the whole shebang for you. So that's a good start too.
Definitely. I know even without the all the human capital behind that use case, I know a lot of newer contractors, even a lot of small businesses in general, are going with Gusto.
Oh,
Um,
that sounds good.
I personally have not used it myself other
Yeah.
than, from the contractor perspective, working with other companies. But they kind of do make onboarding pretty seamless.
Yeah.
They'll send the employee or the contractor a link, contractor clicks, verifies their identity, uploads all the required documents, and all of that just kind of goes right into the system. So
Oh,
for somebody who's kind of new to payroll, can't really afford to hire an HR team, that might be a very sort of for now,
yeah, it's a very realistic approach.
solution, a very realistic and affordable approach,
Hmm.
to quickly onboarding staff.
Yeah.
And definitely, check with your verify, trust but verify, right? Make
Yeah.
sure that you read the terms and conditions, compare payroll systems. You don't have to necessarily jump on Gusto because I happen to mention it on this podcast, but you can easily type into Google Gusto
EDP.
and,
I don't know. Bamboo
similar
HR.
softwares,
Just a
right?
bunch of them in there.
Right. And know that if DoD is on your sort of horizon, if they're on your targeted agencies, you
Yeah.
might also look into a cybersecurity subject matter expert, to fulfill the 10-hour a week for your cybersecurity requirement, to maintain compliance on those DoD contracts. May not be a right now thing for a lot of you, but if DoD is on your buyer's list, something to consider for maybe a year down the road, 2 years down the road when you're ready to face those requirements.
Yeah. I
I
think
think we
that,
probably covered most of our bases, right?
yeah, I don't think you need anybody else. I think everybody else comes if it's a direct project, but and indirectly, I think that's really it. Unless you're so busy needing an executive assistant, I don't know.
I mean, it wouldn't be a terrible idea to have a technical writer if you yourself are not one. Um,
Oh, yeah.
it might not be terrible. That was one course that I took. I think it was my first year in college, and I was like, I had already been involved in government contracting at that time, and I was like, oh, technical writing, I know what that is. I was really, really good at it.
Yeah.
But look, I would not be able to focus through some of the proposals that you and your team write,
I
for clients, which is a amazing work, but
think it's hard writing
it's very
technical
hard.
proposals. Try reading about writing technical proposals.
Yes. Oh, hang on a
I
minute.
like that kind of
You mean this
torture.
one?
Yeah.
This one? It's gonna
Get
be a
yourself a
while.
proposal writer. Um, so, over time, it's okay to start now, getting familiar and writing proposals and stuff like that. And everybody's like, they think they are a proposal writer because they got ChatGPT and everything.
Right, everybody's a
Um,
proposal writer now.
oh, but ultimately, if you decide to go for bigger contracts, you're definitely going to want to look in getting yourself someone that's certified and has been doing this, for a very long time and has a good win rate. And they're the ones that are going to not only write, but they're going to make sure you're compliant. and that you have win themes, and that your proposal is set up in a pretty little package so that you can win. It's not just words and fluff. It's an actual strategy, and it just kind of makes you stand out from the competition. So that's really what you want. So definitely an investment alongside your BD team is definitely a proposal writer. So, but to me, that's always a luxury. And
Right
so
now, it might be you, right? You might
yeah,
be writing your proposals. And at
yeah,
the end of the day, even when you do go to hire a proposal writer who's definitely not your first priority, I will say, there's still, unless you have a library of winning responses already prepared that you can hand over on a silver platter, that's still going to be a group effort.
yeah.
So you never want to just hire someone and then walk away. They don't know anything about your business. You're
Mm-mm.
going to have to regurgitate basically everything that you've ever done in your business to allow them to create compelling content that's going to win you an award. So as
Yep.
long as you have the right expectation on what that sort of relationship should look like, the more information you're feeding that technical writer, the higher your chances of winning. So if
Right.
you've never talked to the customer, you're not setting that writer up to help you win. If you
Right.
don't know what the customer's pain points are, I mean, who else is going to provide that information? So be sure that you're doing your capture, which ties into BD, to
Mm-hmm.
be able to disseminate that information to the proposal team.
Yep.
Super important for those of you in services, especially. I think that aside from that, I mean, that's like max 5, right?
Yeah.
You could run
Counting,
you
HR.
could run a pretty impressive revenue stream,
Yeah.
just those 5 people
Yeah.
and yourself, right? Your FTEs would then come and fill the contract roles. But
Mm-hmm.
just those 5 people at your core chasing and winning the work, that's scalable.
Yep. That's pretty on point. That's how you should scale upon award to get you going. And use some of those growth, use those profit margins to get your internal team going and winning the next one and the next one. And then when you make enough for proposal writers and consultants will show up. That was perfect.
Uh, Liddell asked, list the 5 once more. Number 1 was your project manager.
Yeah.
Number 2 was your BD.
Mm-hmm.
Number 3, I'm trying to remember the order that we did them. Accounting,
Your
HR,
accounting, your HR, and
legal.
your proposal and your legal
Well, yeah, your accounting and your legal kind of went
are
in the
kind of the
same
same.
level. Yeah, those are 2 areas that, there really is a lack of support for because, those are, specialty. Um,
Yeah.
Consider those your specialists. Your Apex counselor is not allowed to provide you with accounting advice. They're not allowed to provide you with legal advice because they're not
Mm,
CPAs and they're not attorneys. And
yeah.
same goes for Natasha and I, neither are we. So that's why those 2 are so very important there in the middle. Bye, everyone. Have a great week. See you next week. Same time, same place.